we thought we'd do, you know, the biggest hit we could rustle up, which is the first record that Gordon and I ever made. Of course, exactly. It's a cliche that you heard with it. And that is a song called World Without Love. Yeah. But I will try to tell you briefly how that came to pass. I don't know if any of you know the story, but what happened was, my sister Jane ended up going out with Paul McCartney. You may or may not know any of this stuff. They met because she'd gone to review their concert for a magazine. She was a well-known actress and still is. And she met them all. She thought they were charming and funny, and she loved the band, so the music was great. They liked her very much, and Paul asked her out and so on. And they ended up going out together for a couple of years. And one of the results of that was that, of course, Paul was hanging around our house a lot. And eventually, our parents kind of took pity on him and offered him the guest room on the top floor of the house, which was where my bedroom was. It was a guest room up there. And when they weren't out on the road, that's where Paul lived. So we shared the top floor of our family home for about 2 years. And of course, that's how we became friends, which we still are. And we had quite a lot of interests in common. We both played the guitar, him very much better than me. We both had collections of American records, or we'd been able to get hold of. His collection was bigger than mine. In fact, in retrospect, it sounds like a fairly depressing experience, but it was fun at the time. And I also, of course, one of the benefits was I did get to hear some of the songs that he wrote during that period as they got written. I'll tell you about a couple of particular cases, because it was an interesting time. In the house there was, Paul and I lived on the top floor, and in the basement there was a little music room that my mother would use to give private lessons, and she was a classical musician, an oboe professor at the Royal Academy of Music up the road, played in a number of orchestras and so on. And she also gave private lessons at home, and when she did, she used this little basement music room, had an upright piano, a sofa, and a music stand. And she had told Paul that if he wanted to use it at any time, to write in, that, you know, when she wasn't teaching, it was totally free, and he should use that piano whenever he wanted. And this particular occasion was very shortly after he moved in, earlier in their career. And John came over, and they were downstairs together in this music room for, I think, about an hour and a half. And no guitars, interestingly. The guitars were upstairs in Paul's bedroom and mine. We had them all mixed up. And Paul stuck his head out of the music room and called up the stairs to see if I wanted to come down and hear the song that they had just finished. So I said, great, and I came down, I sat on the little sofa. They sat side by side on the piano bench and played I Want to Hold Your Hand for the first time to anyone. So that, I admit, that was pretty cool. And you know, because usually you don't know when something's special, but at that particular moment you kind of go, I think I'm in the right place at the right time. This is pretty damn good. And you immediately ask them to play it again, just like we used to with records back then. You know, you finish 45 would finish you. I love it, and you'd play it again. And that's, I said, they asked me what I thought. I said, it's amazing. You know, can you play it again? Can you play it again? And the other song I'd heard was this song, World Without Love, and Paul had written it, and John didn't like it. Because usually one of them would start a song. I Want to Hold Your Hand was together from scratch, but usually one of them would start and they'd finish it together. But in this instance, apparently, John just made fun of it. I've read later that apparently when Paul sang the first line, which is "Please lock me away," John would go, "Okay, I will, the song's over." He apparently wasn't keen on it. The Beatles weren't going to do it, so it was the kind of an orphan song that I'd heard unfinished. And then a few months later, quite coincidentally, nothing to do with this, that Gordon and I had been lucky enough to get a record deal. We were playing in a club and got talent spotted by an EMI A&R guy. They auditioned us, gave us the record deal, done. And they'd said, you know, if you know any other songs that might be good for your first session, feel free to bring them. And that's when I went back to Paul and said, you know, is that song still up for grabs? Is it still unfinished and unspoken for? And he said, yes, yes, and yes. And I said, well, could we do it? We've got a record deal. And I said, sure, you know. So he wrote out the words for me so I could learn them. We wrote the words and the chords, which on a piece of paper I still have, I have to say. Safely painstakingly locked in the safe at home, so that when everything goes completely to shit, I can run the Sotheby's like a whip. But anyway, we loved the song. I did have to prevail upon Paul to write the bridge in time for our session, but he did. We recorded it and went to #1 in the UK, #1 in Europe, and eventually, to our amazement and delight, #1 in America, which was so exciting for us for all the reasons I've explained before. Not just we had a #1 record, but it meant we were going to America. We were going to go there, and it was so great. And that's how my career came to be. So I owe the song a debt of gratitude. Now I know it was 51 years ago actually that this record was #1. So here in America. So that means that if any of you are old enough to remember when it was #1, you're probably too old to remember much of anything at all. But like us. But anyway, in the event that any of the lyrics do come drifting back to you through the mists of time, do please join in and sing as we end our show with World Without Love. 2, 3, 4. Please lock me away and don't allow the day here inside where I hide with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. Birds sing out of tune and rain clouds hide the moon. I'm okay, here I'll stay with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. Famous bridge he finished in the last minute. So I wait, and in a while I will see my true love smile. She may come, I know not when. When she does, I'll know. So baby, until then, lock me away and don't allow the day here inside where I hide with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. My true love smile. She may come, I know not when. When she does, I'll know. So baby, until then, lock me away and don't allow the day here inside where I hide with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love.